It is fair to argue that Christianity is around 2,000 years old and that its roots are much older yet. But Christianity itself, we can say that since we're in the year 2022, that we're basically a couple thousand years old in terms of how old Christianity is. And some interesting things have happened in that time. And one of them is this idea of people following Judaic tradition while being Christians, some of them never having actually been counted among the Jews at all, just taking on that way of doing business. And I wanted to talk on a part of what has been used by some people to justify the idea of following Judaic traditions if you're a Christian, and that's Paul and Judaism. That's what I want to talk about today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, Tom Kurt, and today is Saturday, the 12th of February of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page, on minds.com, on locals.com, on Parler, on Gab, and anywhere else you might happen to be seeing me today. Hope everything is going well for you, and remember, Rumble is my preferred platform. And today, again, we are going to talk on the subject of Paul and Judaism, and I'm going to go ahead and use a couple of scriptures to talk about this, but let me go ahead and get through my notes so that you can have some idea what I'm actually talking about. There are a bunch of folks in the modern day who are Christians and following more or less modern Judaic traditions. I say modern because there are things that many of them really took a shape and effect in the way that they did after Christ came onto the earth. And no, I'm not talking about fulfilled Jews, though it's fair to discuss them in that lot as well. Some of them at least. For my part, I have no problem with them doing so, though I think it may be to some folks' detriment. In fact, I suppose it could be helpful or useful, if nothing else, for some of the involved individuals. That said, there are folks attempting to imply certain things for which I really cannot make a case. One example is that Paul, aka Saul of Tarsus, continued to observe Judaic traditions after converting to Christianity, and this is a sign that others in the community can and should do likewise. I'm not saying that he didn't continue to do things as a Jew. He did, as far as I understand it. That's everything I understand to be true. I really wonder how people can come to this conclusion if they take the time to consider what the Bible has to say about this idea. In fact, the funny little reality is that it is Paul himself who talks about this matter in both places I want to cite today. I'll start with a longer passage. Here it is. Galatians 2:11 through 14. And I'm going to use the King James because it's what I'm comfortable with and what I prefer to use for various reasons. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to his face because he was to be blamed. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles, but when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision, that is the Jews, among the Jews, right? And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. In other words, they did as he did and sort of unsituated themselves from the Gentile Christians. But when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the gospel, I said unto Peter, before them all, in front of everybody, if thou, being a Jew, livest after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? And it's a really fine question. Okay, done with that. Now let's get on to this other piece. Okay, we're going to take just a second to cite a single verse, which can be a dangerous thing to do, but I think we're okay doing it here. And it is Colossians 2:16, again in the King James Version. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days. Now the meat and drink thing, let me go ahead and pop this down. I want to go ahead and clarify. The point is that the Jews had very specific rules about what they were supposed to do when it came time to eat and drink and so forth, right? And that's what he's talking about there. In respect to a holy day, well, that might be the Feast of Tabernacles or whatever. It might be something totally outside of that. New moon, I'm not entirely clear what he's talking about, but I'm sure he had excellent reason for doing it. And of course, we know about the Sabbath days, right? I talk about it when I do my videos a lot of times. So the question is this: did Paul continue to observe Judaic traditions because he wanted or expected non-Jews to do so? Though various historical information seems to say he continued to observe such ways of doing things, what I see in Scripture does not indicate he did so in order that other Christians should feel compelled or obliged so to do. Was he being hypocritical in doing as he did? Based on the statement he made to Peter and the one he made, I think it was to the Colossians, I would say the answer to that question is no. I would say he wasn't. Is it wrong to observe those traditions as a Christian or a fulfilled Jew? I think it can be, but in general, I don't believe it is. The main point I want to put forth, though, is this. Based on what Paul himself had to say about all of this, I'm not sure there's generally any benefit that cannot be found elsewhere in doing so. Put simply, I think it's okay to observe Jewish traditions in general as a Christian. Is it essential or even necessary? That's another question, and one I don't think there's a hard and fast answer for. Paul was a Jew. Paul was more than a Jew. Paul was, I think, a Pharisee. I never can remember. Anyway, he was in one of the legitimate bodies of the Jews. And he was well respected in his position before his conversion to Christianity on the Damascus Road. The idea of him continuing to act as the Jews acted is not really a surprising thing when you consider that everything Jesus did could be said to have been done according to the traditions and histories of the Jews, and the real and meaningful stuff at that. So the idea that Paul did that should not be a surprise to anybody. The idea that Peter did that, if he did, and I think he did, should not be a surprise to anybody. The idea that Christians can do those things in order to understand and deepen their understanding of various things that the Jews go through and so forth, that's absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, something that they should be able to do. Again, does that mean it's never harmful? Not at all. Not at all. I will say that I think it rather interesting that many Christians, not many, that a lot of Christians these days are moving ever closer towards the Judaic traditions. Now again, look, I believe that the Jews are God's chosen people. So if you ask me, should Christians or anybody else be attacking the Jews, my answer is no, and Christians ought to be sticking up for them. If you ask me, is it wrong for Christians to do the same things that the Jews do in terms of their traditional activities and behavior, I say that in general I don't believe that's an issue. I think that that's something that people should be able to do with no problem. On the other hand, if you ask me whether or not it's a necessity, a necessary thing for people who are Christians or fulfilled Jews to do those Jewish practices, I have to say I think the answer to that is generally not, unless you feel that that's something that you're called to do. Now, most of the people that I know who follow those traditions follow them with the idea that they're not expecting everybody else to do as they do. And I'm fine with that, okay? And again, I think that for most of those people, it's not harmful for them to do it. But if you think that it's a good thing to try and compel Christians to act as the Jews did, you'll forgive me, you're mistaken. It might be good in terms of dietary law and other things, but I don't think in general that's a grand idea. I just don't. That doesn't mean they can't do it, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Okay, I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Saturday, the 12th of February of 2022. That means tomorrow will be Sunday, the 13th of February of 2022. So today would be that end of the Sabbath at sundown today, and tomorrow will be the beginning of the Christian week, according to the way most Christians seem to view things, and I tend to agree and believe that that's the case. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page, on minds.com, on Gab, on Parler, on locals.com, where I am Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com. Thank you for coming along today. Remember, Rumble tends to be my preferred platform. You can give me a boxing glove or a Rumble on Rumble if you choose to do so. You can give me a plus or a minus there for a positive or negative feedback. Obviously, anywhere else that feedback is available of that sort, you can give me whatever like or dislike, positive or negative sort of feedback that you choose to there. You can, of course, comment on any of my stuff where comments are available as well. And I will do everything that I can to pay attention to whatever comments you happen to put out there. And if I feel it's appropriate, I will respond, but otherwise I'll just try and internalize what it is that you have to say. Of course, I'll delete anything that's advertisements or whatever, as I've said many times before. Subject for today has been Paul and Judaism, and tomorrow we're going to talk on the subject of, and this may sound overly simplistic, but I have reason for talking about this I don't want to get into, but on the subject of sleep. That's what we're going to get into tomorrow. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope those of you who are observing the Sabbath are enjoying your Sabbath. And hopefully you're doing well this year. Started to cool down here again, but hopefully it will warm up again before too very long. And hopefully we will see you again on Sunday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was recorded on Saturday, the 12th of February of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that, and you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.